Hello, everybody. Sorry, we are a little bit late. Kelly had a little bit of some technical glitches, shall we say.
Always.
But thank you for joining us, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us. Kelly Gorman Dunbar is from the world-renowned Dunbar Academy, and we really appreciate you coming and joining us today. We are going to be talking about upping your training, how and why to incorporate sport dog training into your companion dog routine. And before we get started, Kelly, I just want to make a note. Anybody that watched the Kelly's interview with me, the puppy interview, will note that we were actually twinning with our Malinois and our matching shirts. So we actually collaborated before this and made sure
to be different. Yes.
Yeah. But Kelly, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I always love speaking with you. It's such a fun, you're such a good person to chat with. So thank you.
So tell what you've got different dogs. How many dogs have you got? 3, is it?
7.
7. Okay. So, and they're obviously not all sports dogs.
No, 2 are sports dogs. The third was supposed to be, but really just didn't want to. And the others are not. I've got a couple. I might do some fun sports with my little terrier, one of my little terriers in the future. But for the ring sport, which is my primary thing right now, just the 2.
Just the 2. Yeah. So Fran says hello from Fran and Jupiter, and Jen Havens says hi.
Hello.
So, yeah, but I'm just interested because we're going to be talking about how to introduce sport dog stuff training into your companion dog's life. Given you've got 7 dogs and they're not all sports, have you done that? Obviously, you've probably done that yourself, but maybe you could talk us through that.
Through how to work with my pet dogs in this sport way? Yeah. So, I've been a companion dog trainer for a long time, let's just say, decades. And, I dabbled in sports here and there for a while, 15 years ago-ish, maybe a little longer, and didn't have the right dog for it and kind of got out of it and got busy doing other things because sports take a long time. They take a lot of commitment, and you kind of have to clear your plate of, you have to pick and choose. It doesn't have to be your only thing, but you do have to spend quite a bit of time. So I didn't always have the time or the right dog or the right circumstances. And then, I kind of forced the stars to align a little bit when I got Laz, and he's in here with me right now, and made it work. But in the meantime, I do have these other dogs. But the whole point of this is that even though I've been training for years and I've been doing, behavior consulting, puppy training, puppy raising, shelter dog training, with all of that I was doing, I have to say the freshest thing, and I've always taken CE. By no means do I think I know everything, or, there's always so much more to learn and people to learn from and discuss and brainstorm with. But I'd say the freshest thing that I've done is to get into the sport world. And it didn't have to be bite sports. I think there is a certain advantage to the bite sports when you're dealing with behavior cases and aggression and hyper arousal and things like that. We can talk about that in a minute. But just training to a criteria that is not your own, not just your own, and which was hard for me because I also I'm not a nitpicky person. I'm kind of a that's good enough person, or that's great, and it doesn't have to be, and I'm not kind of a corners tucked kind of girl. And so training to a standard and having to proof in certain ways and motivate the dog in front of you who may love working with you and may love aspects of your chosen sport, but maybe doesn't love every single piece, or doesn't understand every single piece, or just doesn't thrive, isn't the right word, isn't good at every piece. Like maybe your dog isn't a great jumper, but you want to do agility, or it's very short or something. They can still be great jumpers when they're short. Or scent work. In scent work, where I first started competing, more seriously, like, you can have a tiny dog and then the elevated hides are challenging, or vice versa. So, it really kind of helped me hone my craft in companion work to have very, very clear criteria that you have to meet, and then scaffold and meet those goals. Now, you might say, as a behavior consultant, or as a trainer, or or someone who has a dog, that you do have goals and you are training towards them. That, sure, that's true. But again, having different eyes on it and having somebody else be the arbiter of the situation and the points is different. So it's made me clearer with my criteria. It's made me question myself more than the dog. And I've been doing this for a long time, and we do know that it's almost always, I never say never, but it's almost always the handler or the person or the family or that we control the dynamic, and we are the ones with the expectations in most cases. Your dog might be perfectly happy barking at the fence line every day, but you don't want that, so it's kind of on you to communicate that and change that behavior. But it's made me have to learn to be so much clearer, so that they can truly understand under all sorts of different all sorts of pressures out in the world, in a way that I couldn't have dreamed of. I mean, the way that it's upped my game is I could go on forever, and I will go on forever, but I have a lot more to say.
Yeah, so I mean, with sports dogs, there's a lot of arousal, as you mentioned before. Not maybe necessarily with a companion dog. I mean, what sort of things when you're taking your sport dog training and applying it to a companion dog? What sort of specific things are we talking about? Or does it depend?
I mean, I guess it's turning that arousal and excitement on and off, because almost any sport, I mean, maybe there's, I don't know, maybe competition obedience is an exception. I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying it might not fit this model. Is going to be super exciting for the dog. So if you're doing scent work, they're driven, their nose is leading the way, keeping them with you, while also working kind of independently of you is something that can be kind of challenging. If you're doing agility, which I only dabbled in, I am not an agility competitor, but I did dabble in that for a little while. And your dog has to go super, super, super fast, but then have a lot of control and still stay with you. They have to be listening. It's not, it's not just running amok after a lure or something. I'm going to get into the instinctual part of the sports in a minute. So, there's something certainly to be said about like lure coursing and fast cat and that kind of stuff as well. But keeping your dog clear-headed and with you, while also letting them work independently of you or work at this high arousal, and then being able to calm that down enough. It's like you're learning to use the gas and the brakes at a higher level than just kind of tootling along in a jalopy. You're now working with a Formula One race car, whether it's a Malinois or not. If it's a terrier doing, fast cat or ground trials or whatever it may be. So you learn to embrace the natural part of what your dog can do, and you have to learn to let go a little bit. I find with companion dogs, we're controlling every aspect of their day. We're tamping everything down, especially if you're a professional. Maybe not in your own home, but certainly in your work. Right? People are constantly calling us and saying, "How do I stop this from happening?" I don't want my border collie hurting the children. Well, we can say maybe you should have thought of that before, but we're constantly trying to, unfortunately, quash the dogs and quash their natural spirits and their instincts and drives. So I would like for companion dog trainers and owners to not be afraid of that drive, and instead learn how to harness that, because it's beautiful if you can tap into that arousal and get the brakes and get the gas and the brakes just right. with your dog, with what they love to do instinctively, then like, oh my gosh, it takes your relationship to a whole new level. And then you can push them further with pressure. And with pressure, I mean, just taking them out in the world and doing more with them, because they can stay with you longer, because you're no longer kind of the roadblock to everything that they love. You're now the key. And it's different than just using, life rewards. I mean, I'm a big proponent of using life rewards and saying, okay, you love to chase squirrels. This maybe is a bad example. I don't think that's a really great idea for most dogs, but you love to chase squirrels, but you're going to have to first come to me and sit and make eye contact, and I'll release you to the squirrels, or whatever it may be. A lot of people, use life rewards that way, but when you're working with them and again turning it on and off and keeping them in tune to you while also releasing, like it does, I just keep thinking it unlocks something, so I want people to be able to harness their dogs natural ability and I'm going to say irritations, right, to the human. A lot of times they're the irritants in life, the things that bugaboo, the thing that bothers you about your dog is the thing that they most want to do, or most not right, or most naturally made to do. So there's that. And this isn't even getting into like super arousal or anything. Another thing that's very helpful is when you are revving dogs up on purpose, whether it's for agility. Oh, someone, did I just rev you up? Someone's excited.
Yeah.
Hello. She's like, yeah, she's cheering. She's like, yes, let's do it. I just said yes, and that lad was looking at me like, what did I do? Like I'm marking him for you're being a good boy. When you are revving dogs up to do a run, whether again it's a fast cat run or agility run or bite work or ready for fly ball, like you're kind of using opposition reflex, and you're like pulling them back, and you want them to burst out and go. Where do we most see that kind of behavior outside of sports? You see people with their dogs on harnesses going to the park, going past the park or out near the bike path or whatever it may be, and they're essentially revving their dogs up unintentionally all the time at the times when they actually really want them calmer, and they're unaware because they've never tried to rev their dog up. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying?
Would you also say an example of maybe tapping into the natural drives and genetics of that particular dog is maybe a dog that maybe is going out for a walk with their human and they're excited, so maybe they're grabbing onto the human and biting the sleeve and stuff, whereas if that person actually got the thing that they loved, which might be a tug, and had a game of tug with them, then they're doing that and harnessing that energy as opposed to and connecting more with their dog too, because it's going to build that relationship, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so often, you hit the nail on the head. These dogs are telling us so clearly what they need, what they crave, and I think it's just a huge mistake to ignore that or quash that rather than just harness it and embrace it and take it into consideration. And I even did this with shelter dogs to a degree. These dogs that live in kennels and their lives are pretty small, and they're often pit bull mixes and things like that, or big strapping shepherds and big adolescent dogs that are like just bursting with energy, and they're supposed to go for a calm walk with a volunteer, but they're never given the outlet, and so now they're a leash grabber and they're going to pull it the whole time, and they are going to leap up at you, and if they can get a bad rep that way, they can knock people over, and people don't want to walk them, and of course now they have their energy even more pent up. And I think again, people are, there's still to this day, people think that, playing tug of war with your dog is a bad thing. It's going to make them aggressive.
Yeah, because some people are still putting that out there saying, oh no, you don't play tug with your puppy. It's just going to ruin them. You're going to end up with a dangerous dog.
Yeah, and it's so misguided. I mean, but again, it comes back to that people are afraid of dog behavior in a lot of ways. They're afraid of arousal. They're afraid of this. And so, they just try to cap it constantly. And, it's like a pressure cooker without a valve.
So it has the opposite effect, is what you're saying, because they're not getting those outlets met. So then they're like exploding when they get out there.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our Facebook people says, it's a thrill to be here with you from Philadelphia. Judy Ratmore says, hello, ladies. Judy Ratmore here from Maine. Hello, Judy. Judy was one of the speakers on the summit.
Hello, Judy.
Jen says, I'm at the point with my 3-year-old cuckoo, bitey, fast-thinking whippet. Oh, cuckoo. Okay, crazy.
Yeah, cuckoo, yeah. It's a new breed.
I thought it was a breed. Like,
the cuckoo. Although I know a few cuckoo-poos.
I'm at the point with my 3-year-old cuckoo, bitey, fast-thinking whippet, Vinny. The on-off wonderful relationship is probably one of the most awesome feelings I can have with a dog. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it really does take. I keep saying it to another level and a key, and those are just literally the images in my head. Like it opens up. It opens up the world. I mean, you see how all these like high-end trainers are doing all these fancy, nearly impossible or seemingly impossible feats with their dogs. And in some cases they're brilliant trainers, of course, and they're they work very hard. These things don't come for free, but they also just like the connection. You don't get that without connection. You can't force that kind of performance. It's got to come from joy and partnership's not really the word I want, but I mean just cooperative joy.
Yeah, Jen says, totally like unlocking a safe with $1 bazillion in it for me. Wow.
Yeah, oh, I love it. Yeah, so my mission is to bring this into the dog, the companion dog and pet dog training world, because it's a lot of dogs are so misunderstood, and our lives really don't fit most of them anymore. And I do think we have to, our lives, even 20, 30 years ago, when so many of us were growing up, and even beyond, when historically, companion dog life was kind of written, if you will, we had a different lifestyle than we do now. Technology has changed the world at such a rapid pace that, at my extraordinarily young age, it's already so different than when I was a child. When people were outside a lot and dogs were outside a lot, and there was room and there was more tolerance of an animal barking, for instance, when people came to the past and stuff. But now, technology has changed it. Everyone's indoors, everyone's insular, everything's getting smaller in the external world while the World Wide Web gets.
Oh, we've lost her. Bear with us, guys. She's having some technical issues here. Oh, she's back.
Sorry, everybody. I always have well, I'm on my phone now, and I don't know because
it's all good. It's all good.
Because of the thing not working. So things change so much, and I almost feel like this is gonna. I hope this doesn't sound terrible. I mean it in a terrible way, so we can discuss. But it's almost like we have to treat our dogs like zoo animals in order to understand how we have to give them the enrichment and care that is necessary for them, because our natural life just doesn't even fit what a domestic dog was built for.
No, that
at
makes
all.
Sense. Yeah. I'm assuming, Ghislaine says, my rescue Roddy girl has a great nose, and I have heard that scent work or nose work is good for reactive dogs. What sort of things should I do? Is scent work different from nose work? Any criteria for choosing a trainer? Do I have to compete, or is working at home okay? After a year and a half, I still can barely bring her out in public. She barks ferociously at everything.
Oh, rescue Roddy. That's something that really hits me close to my heart. Because I have a rescue Roddy. Of course, with 7 dogs, what don't I have? But I do have a rescue Roddy.
I don't know how you have 7 dogs. It's like 3
I do. Well, I mean, there are 2 of us here, and Leslie does help a ton. He's great, and he has a couple that are kind of have become his as over the years, and we have all this space. So it's a lot, but it's also it's kind of what I do. So anyway, I do have a rescue Roddy, and I got him when he was about a year old, just at about 12 months. And he was a nightmare. He's a huge, beautiful beast, and he was so lungy, barky. He had a couple very high level, but a couple live bites and everything. And so I know how that feels. And, they're naturally suspicious and defensive dogs, and they can be like that. So I'm going to think about him while I answer this question. So I love that you asked if you have to compete. There's a lot packed into this.
Want me to go through one by one?
So yes, but first but I want to start there, even though it's out of order, because I love that you asked if you have to compete, and the answer is no. I wouldn't think you should feel any pressure. That's something that, training to the criteria and then being judged, and you are literally being judged, is
fine.
It's scary, but it also facing that fear is also an amazing sense of accomplishment for the human end of the leash there. And it's not for everybody, and I'm not pushing it. But I was terrified. I was terrified of competing. Really, we can get into the psychology of why that might be another day. It's a whole another conversation as to why some of us feel that way. But the idea of being critiqued, which is very close to being criticized in some people's brains, versus some people see that as a challenge, and other people just get smaller. Is really hard. But honestly, this goes for us as much as it goes for our dogs. We haven't even touched on this subject yet, but facing small challenges does so much for self-confidence, self-esteem, and opening up the world, for both dogs and for people. So, this idea that your dog should never have any pressure, and that they should never have a tough day. And I don't mean, obviously, let's be realistic. I'm not talking abuse. I'm not talking, neglect or anything like that. But like the fact that maybe they don't want to do something, or they don't think they can do something, and we push a little bit. This comes to sports. Like sometimes some things are hard, and agility is a great one for that, because like there's a lot of obstacles literally that you have to overcome. And when they figure out that they can do that with your help, like you see them puff up. And the same happens to us if we go push out of our comfort zone. But you do not have to compete. You can have the rules, you can know the rules, you can do fun matches with your friends, you can compete in your own mind. The goal is really just to test your own training and see that your methods and work, and that your relationship is strong enough that you're able to ride out some challenges or distractions and compete against yourself, and just try to do your personal best. And even if you're not that organized, because I'm not, I was like, I did, so many reps, and they were, 20% of them were perfect, or 60% were okay. I'm not that person. I wish I were. But I do have a lot of trainer friends that are, not all of them, but some. And that's brilliant. But even if you don't do that, if you're getting out there, you have a goal, and it's not like, what can I do today? I'm gonna sit in a different place, so I'm gonna do some position changes. Oh, let's do some it gets kind of boring and rote. But if you're like, okay, wow, my dog has to learn how to pick up this rolled sock, and bring it back to me. Well, my dog loves to play fetch. Oh, but will they retrieve? And will they retrieve that without chewing? And there's no pressure. You take as long as you want. Futz around with it, figure it out. It really changes your communication skills. It changes your training chops and your communication skills with your dog. So you don't have to compete. I wouldn't let that stop you. It's that's, to me, neither here nor there. There are some benefits if you are at all inclined, but train with a group, train at home. It doesn't really matter. There are so many online courses that you can take to dabble, so that you can become familiar with what you're doing. And it does help to know the rules. I know that sounds silly and seems maybe obvious, but you would be amazed at how many people get into a sport and start training, because they have a coach or they're going to a class, and they don't know the criteria that they're training for.
I'm a bit like that. I've entered competitions and then gone, actually I should probably read up on what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, right. Because sometimes in some of these sports there's handler expectations, and you're not thinking of that when you're training the dog, right? And it's like, I've lost 30 points on an exercise for one misplaced word. Misplaced word. you know.
And
So yeah, and you're like, oh man, and that's
yeah. You've only got yourself to blame.
So there's more in this though. I can't read that because I'm on my phone.
So she does say, so she wants to know, is there a difference between scent work and nose work, but also are either of them good for reactive dogs?
The answer is they are so good for reactive dogs. It's so scent work in general is so good for reactive dogs. It's bizarrely beautiful. I mean, I have some theories, and we all have some reasons. We know that it works. We have some theories around that, but to the extent that it helps reactive dogs and shy, fearful dogs, it's amazing. And you can even just take it on the road. Literally, once they have the basics, you can take it on the road on walks and trails and stuff. So yes, it will help. It helps your dog focus. And it goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning. Like, how do you get your dog in the zone? And when they're in the zone, you've got this beautiful kind of surfing, that you can do. It gives them purpose. It gives them direction. It gives them an outlet. It satiates them. In a way that we can't. They smell the way that we see. We kind of put blinders on them in most companion homes. Don't sniff that. Don't sniff that. Get your nose out of the garbage can. Don't sniff the crotch. Don't come on the walk. Let's keep going. And you're not allowing them to read or experience the world in the way that makes the most sense to them. So, and you'll see it in some companion dogs, and even in some crossover sport dogs, agility dogs. I often initially, if they come into scent work much later than their agility, often initially when scent work started, we got a lot of agility dogs in classes that had either retired or had injuries and had to get out of the sport. And they would get so frustrated because they're waiting for direction.
Yeah.
The handler's been literally telling them where to go. And now the handler's like, be free, tell me where it is. And they would bark and get frustrated and look at the handler and be like, come on, what are you standing there for? What am I supposed to do? But anyway, yes, it's a beautiful thing. And as far as scent work, nose work are the same thing. There is an organization called Canine Nose Work, I think, and that's just a certain organization. But there are different types of scent work, right? So you can do air scenting, which is what most people are talking about when they're talking about scent work, which the dog can catch the scent on the air and then follow it, kind of like Snoopy. The cartoons, or all the dogs you see in the cartoons that are floating in the air following the scent, and then there's tracking, and that's the blood down. You're braver than I. That's very challenging, very interesting for sure, but holy cow.
There's something about going out in the early morning when it's peaceful, there's no one else around, maybe there's a bit of fog or something, and it's you and your dog, and it's a beautiful connection when your dog's leading the way. And anyway, that's by the way. But I think
but there's some zen in there too, right? Like, again, it's that connection, it's that partnership, and honing in and focusing. It's like dog yoga in a way.
Meditation. Yeah. I think so. The fact that she's got a Roddy, Rotties are working dogs, aren't they? So, she's kind of got that in her favor as it's a companion dog, but it wants to work for sure. Would you say?
Yes. And again, we talked about the pressure cooker. If you don't provide an outlet and they don't have access to the outlets that they need, they're going to find something. It's going to come out somewhere. And this is largely one of the many primary reasons that we have so much reactivity and kind of just chaotic behavior, because the dogs don't have any proper outlets. So it would absolutely be a wonderful thing to do. If your dog is super reactive, you can still go to a class when they're with scent work, because every dog works individually. It's another beautiful thing about it. Back when I was teaching scent work classes, 80% of them were dogs that couldn't attend a regular class or a regular sport. People that wanted to get out with their dogs, let's say 75%. Then we had a very fearful contingency, and then an other sport, contingency. But it's not only good for reactive dogs, it's good for shy dogs. I've had pancake globally fearful dogs that have blossomed in classes. I've had blind dogs with 3 legs. literally, I mean, ancient dogs, dogs with cancer, like it's just, it's good for all dogs. But so there's tracking, and that is a thing in and of itself, and you can get tracking titles without having to do all the other stuff in sports, and that's kind of fun. And I think nosework is a good gateway for people who are maybe a little shy about getting into sports anyway, because so much of it is on the dog, and there's a lot less pressure on the handler. Doesn't mean you don't have things to do or not do, as it may be, right, in scent work. You do, but it's not as handler focused, and it's harder for you to mess up the whole thing the way you can in my sport as a handler. So,
Yeah.
oh yes, is there more in there? That was a
No,
lot.
I think that's about it. Oh, she just says criteria for choosing a trainer.
Almost all. I mean, that's a good question. There are different methodologies. None of them are really bad. There's a lot of different ways to start your dog in scent games, and some of it's literally just hunting for food in boxes, and other people do it more operantly, like by teaching a nose target, and scent, and it doesn't really matter. Some methods may suit certain breed types or personalities better than other, or certain handlers, but it's not like there's somebody that you have to watch out there for in scent work. It's not the kind of thing where people are forcing dogs and being abusive to dogs. So I would just say get out there and try it.
I think what I love about the whole nose work and enrichment stuff is it builds confidence in the dog, as you said, but it also builds optimism. And I think, as you say, like you can see the dog turn around, like it's just amazing. Yeah. But,
and you'll get to read dogs really well, which is a beautiful thing. Like you have to sit back. You don't know how to. You can't do this for them.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Yeah, they have to do it themselves. Yeah, that's where it's such a pure sport in that sense. You're not saying, I want you to go over there, I want you to do a sit, a drop, or whatever. I actually want you to figure it out.
And you have to trust your dog and learn how to read your dog and see their tells. And and then if you are in a class, you are watching other people's dogs. Even though the dogs go one by one, you get to watch each other, and it's actually really great, the camaraderie and supporting the other dogs, but watching how the dogs often are very similar, because you can see where the air is flowing, and you say, wow, they all hit that corner, they all did this, they all did that, and it's like you can see what the dog is sniffing. It's really cool.
It is really cool. Like with my Rottweiler that you can see up on the wall behind me. So when I was doing footstep tracking with him, like the first part of that, you lay the track yourself, so you know exactly where it is. But when he kind of moved up a level, somebody else lays the track, and you've got no idea where it was. And it was fascinating watching him, because I didn't know where it went, and it's that the whole trust your dog thing. So he had to be able to figure it out. And yeah, it was really interesting, really interesting. But Jen says, my anxious dog used to be a champion lure courser, a top whippet in I guess SoCal is South California.
Southern California, yeah.
Okay. And was diagnosed with a big heart problem. Oh, sorry, Jen. Can't run much anymore. Scent work and digging has literally saved him from having so many hard days. It's so good. All this.
Yeah. It really it does. I mean, the bond that I would build with these scent work dogs, because people get addicted. They go and you see them for years, to the classes. But the dogs would age, or they were having physical issues, and this was like, they still have brains, they still have noses, and they light up, they wake up.
Yes.
Now we have an extra special guest.
Yes. So Dave says, not sure if this is in line with your topic, but what would you suggest for training our 5-month-old Spoodle not to jump up on the barrier we put in place to keep him from venturing into the kitchen?
He's jumping over the barrier?
Yeah, or jumping up. He says on it. I'm not sure, yeah.
I've certainly seen the over as well. I mean, you've got a young adolescent there, so I mean, I'm a little confused whether they're just leaning up on the gate and they just don't even want that because they think that's a gateway to gate jumping. If it's of no consequence, and I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't think that that's okay. But if it looks like this is a precursor to jumping, or it's just something you don't want because it might knock your gate over, then you've got to be very careful about your mannerisms and your behavior around the gates, right? So you can easily teach a dog to respect a barrier and not jump a barrier, or not barrel through a doorway, or whatever it may be, or to sit before you open the door, but if you don't want them jumping on, I would just do little drills where I'd keep calm. I wouldn't pet my dog over the barrier. I wouldn't feed them treats over the barrier. I wouldn't, I'd make sure that you kind of use that as a real wall, pretend that it's a wall, and not encourage any kind of interaction through it if you don't want them, because otherwise you're kind of teasing them. They're trying to get to you. They want to interact, and then just do little drills where you can. Sometimes in this case, putting the feet up on the bars on the top as a cue, and then teaching them off and on and off and on. Actually putting the behavior on cue that you don't like can reduce it dramatically. Partially, I swear, it's just Murphy's Law. As soon as you want to teach them to do something, they won't do it anymore. Try teaching your barking dog to speak on cue and see how that goes. And it takes a minute. It takes a minute, So, but then now you have stimulus control as well, and now you can also cue an off and reward an off, and then you can start only rewarding the off, and in the meantime, throw food and tell them off, throw the food on the other side. That's very different than feeding them food at the gate, tossing in the back if you want to give them something. Just all or none reward training. Whenever there's 4 on the floor, rewarding that. Cueing 4 on the floor, which is kind of an off. Very easy to do as long as you're not unintentionally reinforcing the behavior. I think, but also you've got a tween, barely burgeoning adolescent here, and that's not. They're not they don't make the best choices in those days. So
I think people really struggle with that whole teaching something on cue, like a behavior you don't want, so you can do the opposite, teach the opposite behavior, because they're like, well, I'm teaching it to bark and I don't want it to bark. I want it to stop barking. And I think, conceptually, in their mind, it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
But it works. I mean, again, you can get stimulus control, which is hugely important. And if you can turn something on, you can turn it off, if you've done your work right. But also, as Joe Rosie recently said in the summit that I did recently, in the conversation I had with her, just reinforcing something that they're doing naturally can reduce the behavior. And you see that with people too, right? I was just listening to something or somebody, I don't know if it was Joe or somebody else, about talking about how when people were giving blood voluntarily, they were coming out in droves, right? And as soon as they got paid for it, the numbers went down, right? It devalued it in a sense. Like, I was doing this because I want to do it, and now you're like, don't tell me what I have to do. Don't reward me.
That's really interesting. Interesting.
So, but also your puppy is very young. There's going to be some, impulse control issues for a little while, and management and kindness, and just keep reiterating what you want, keep reinforcing what you want, manage when you can't, and ride out this next 6, 7, 8 months or so,
or longer, depending.
I know. Wanted to leave him with a little hope, or 2 years, or depends on the breed.
Ghislaine, who's got the rescue Roddy, okay, boy, can you get down now? Says, I am older and arthritic, and so are some of my dogs. So no agility. I can do rally with my old Roddy boy. My reactive Roddy girl will do the rally stations at home, though not in public. We will try scent work with her. Any other sports for us creaky older people's dogs? Oh, God.
I mean, scent work really is it. I mean, and don't underestimate how much fun you'll have, and how exhausted your dogs will be afterwards. You can't take your dog to the park for an hour and a half and have them as tired as they will be after a nose work class. And in a class, of 6 dogs, they're only working probably 10 minutes a piece, and they go home and they sleep in the car. So that would be a great thing to do. And what else can you do? I mean, rally is fun to do at home. That's for the dog that's reactive. And also, you don't move too much. And that one, I'm thinking, what else can be? I mean, for a non-reactive dog, fast cat's kind of a fun thing to do. You don't do anything. Just have to release the hound, literally, and let them run their hearts out. Dock diving is similar, although you have to be able to throw.
Oh, you mentioned river coursing before too.
Yeah, I mean, there are things, like the ground trials and stuff where you just let your dog off and do their thing, but it's managed. It's certainly, it's certainly managed. But work coursing, they don't have a ton of that. But it's the fast cat basically, right? You take them and they run. They're just usually it's safe. There's usually some kind of barriers so the dogs can run, and they're not going to run into. It's not racing, against each other. So they go one by one. But I think scent work, a basic, air scenting and hunting or hunting game. You can do a hunting game without knowing anything about scent work. Just teach your dog to find the thing and start with the very small, very easy challenges. You can use food on the little, Tupperware top or inside a Kong, very just loose food, and now you're pairing with the Kong. That later, but just hiding things around and letting them find them. It's a very neat activity that I use to this day without any formality. Okay, it's really crummy out. Let's put everybody away in one room. They have to wait their turns, and they come out one by one. And then I will do a sit stay for that because I'm the one hiding it if I'm alone. So hold on, you have to stay here. So we're practicing some of that, and then I leave and hide something and come back and release them, and then they go find it, and oh my gosh, they'll do that till the cows come home.
Yeah. I've done it when I've been, had the flu, and you've got high drive dogs, and you can just see the behavior in the house escalate because they're not getting out because you don't have the energy. And I'll just do exactly what you said, but mine's a bit more of a free for all, so I'll get them outside or whatever, sprinkle food, like little bits of food throughout the house. Let them smell my hand, and then and then it's like they're like, whoa, trying to trying to gobble up all the food.
Yeah, it's a competition. Yeah. I do that too. Yeah, the scattering and hiding, or doing the scatter when they're not there, or even when they are there. And woo, it's raining food. Yes, they love that. I used to scatter feed my old rescue pit bull. She was very old and creaky, and she couldn't do much. But she had a nose still, and so I would put everybody else away so she had a fighting chance, and then scatter feed her in the back. And my boyfriend said, "You feed Missy like a chicken." Scattering this. Kind of.
It's amazing, like when you've got dogs, and I don't know, your Roddy girl's, I think you said she's a year and a half, so she's going to have a lot of energy, and you'll be surprised how much that nose work ties around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on using sport dog activities for?
I never know how to say this word, right? I don't think I've ever heard. Is it tray ball?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know how to say it, but this is something else you can do with the Roddy. It's basically herding. Which Roddies can herd, some of them.
Yes,
with big balls that are hardy balls. And how do you spell that? TRIE.
It's EI. Is it EI or IE? I think it's EI.
EI. Yeah, EI.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can look that up because it's something you can do. You don't have to be very mobile to do that. You can do it in your backyard. I mean, again, this is not competition level, but it's basically kind of a soccer / herding game that they play, and they have to direct the balls between the goalposts, kind of thing, or back to a certain area, and that's another fun game.
Croquet. Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Get it back to the other direction. And so that would be, Roddy would love that. We may have to teach her not to burst the balls. I don't know what they use, but they're very big.
Have some
And
use. Yeah.
because that'd be otherwise kind of expensive game.
Yeah,
But
those those big balls that you can sit on in front of a computer. I forget what they're called, or pregnant ones.
Yeah, exactly.
I think dogs can put holes in those ones. So yeah, the ones for tribal must be, or tribal, or whatever it is.
Whatever it is, yeah, must be bigger,
Yeah.
or it's more rubbery, or like. I mean, but I think also you teach them not to bite, and to they're big enough that, and maybe and if you're directing them, you can get them to start nosing. I don't know. It's not my sport, clearly, but it is interesting. I have a dog that would love that. One of my dogs is very herdy and circular, and he would love that. But yeah, I don't know.
Great for like the herding breeds like border collies and Australian.
Look, someone's spelling it. Someone's spelling it below, aren't they?
REIBALL. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you pronounce that now?
I don't know. For me, I look at it and go tribal, but then I'm wondering, yeah, maybe it's tribal. I don't know.
I don't know. But looks fun, and something that is mostly dog centric. I mean, there's direction, but dogs are doing their thing.
Ghislaine says my Roddy boy loves to play soccer with his 14-inch jolly ball.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love
you've got little dogs as well as big dogs, haven't you? So
I do.
So people watching this that have got little ones and they're like, well, they're not going to be doing, I mean, other than something like scent work, what activities do you do with your little dogs that might be appropriate in that, in the setting of sport dogs / introducing sports into companion dogs?
I mean, definitely little agility courses of my own making, just like when I was a little kid and used to do horseback riding before agility really existed. I'm that old. I used to ride horses, and I'd set up little obstacle courses for my dogs and for my goat. I mean, think about it. Goats are made for agility. I'm surprised there's not more goat agility out there. But you make up little. I mean, really, obstacle courses. I mean, rally and obedience is fun for the littles. They could definitely, they still can learn. And rally is so fun. And, it's obedience with a twist, and it just keeps everything happy. I also, honestly, what I do is I play circus, because I have a bunch of little dogs. so, I have platforms. They all have their little cato boards.
Oh, cool.
Teach them to go to their boards, and you can jump through hoops and, pick things up and put them into different places. The Canine Circus School, Francis Metcalf, he's got a lot of videos, and there's a ton of ideas for tricks. And because little dogs, like these little sidekicks, I just, you see them like doing all these silly little tricks, like, climbing up on something and putting something somewhere, or unrolling a rug, and, dancing. And, I just like to teach tricks, which there are some trick titles you can get.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, right. Kara Sundance has a whole program for one, I think, and she has a book of 101 tricks that you can teach, and then you can go through, and it's a self-styled course, right, where you can go through and check off the tricks and get your trick titles. And there's also urban detection. The scent work stuff really is fun the little dogs are great at it, too, and they get very creative with the high highs, and they can get all the low ones that nobody can get into. But I play circus, honestly. I mean, I'm still a kid at heart, I guess. And we just do silly jumps and hoop jumps and weave, kind of, doggy dancing kind of stuff. I am not a doggy dancer because I have no rhythm.
You haven't done doggy dance?
I mean, I'm just not a coordinated choreographing and coordinating isn't my thing. But we play around anyway and teach them to spin backwards and walk on their hind legs. And Francis at the Canine Circus School is now teaching a little Jack Russell to do a handstand.
Oh yeah, I've taught a dog to do that, and it's actually quite a decent sized dog too, and it'll do the whole stand on its back legs.
Oh my goodness!
And stuff. Trained it really well. Yeah, but she went to a chicken training camp as well. Chicken clicker training. Yeah, so she's right into the training stuff. But yeah. good one, isn't it? Yeah.
And you can, there's several organizations. I mean, we should find them and link them somewhere. I don't have them all prepared, where you can where you can do, like, you can compete, but you can compete, at home. You can, again, like with the trick classes and the urban detection, you are setting up your own course, and there's certain criteria you have to meet, and you have to video and stuff and send it in. But that way, if you don't want to be at a big event, or don't have access to big events, then you can still get some titles and have some fun. And it's just fun to have the criteria out there.
Show off to your friends.
Yeah.
So Jen says, Kelly, I have to say that you were a big part of why I chose to dive into companion dog training, trick training, and I teach in very practical ways. She became an AKC CGC trick/therapy dog evaluator, and it's so much fun. Got to look into Canine Circus School. Thanks. You've been very inspirational to me. Thank you for being you and for teaching the way you do. Loving the show up and train too. Hashtag.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I love hearing that. I'm happy to inspire anybody with. I mean, I'm just out there playing with my dogs is what I want to do, and my goal is to get more people to want to play with their dogs ongoing. As somebody who has run a puppy school for over 20 years now, it frustrates me when people think that they're finished with puppy school, or that they think it's a chore. It's just the beginning. Learning is ongoing for humans, and it can be for dogs. And again, they don't have jobs, so we can interact with them in this way and give them something to do. So that's great. And Canine Circus School, Francis on Instagram. That's where and Facebook is where he mostly posts. And he's a very inspiring person to watch, as is Omar von Mueller with Monkey and Jumpy. All the tricks.
Ghislaine says AKC has fit dog titles now. I think you record miles. Walked. I'm not sure what that is. I think you record miles walked. Fit dog titles, right? You record the miles that you've walked, right? Gotcha.
Yeah. So there's lay down, buddy. What's up? He's weirded out that I'm having this animated conversation. It's like I've never been on the phone before.
Who's with you?
Laz, I don't see if you can.
Oh,
there he is.
Oh.
My best boy. Are you my best boy? Yeah.
Jen says, same goal here. Let's just play and give our pups some fun ways to meet their needs. Yeah. And God, how many people do you meet that say, I went to puppy school and did no more training, and then they're like, well, my dog doesn't recall, or my dog won't listen to me, and my dog this and my dog that, and you're like,
well, they quit right when it's getting hard. I mean, because you do go through adolescence. We have programs that are in our school where it helps you transition into adolescence, but we really do focus, and we have a couple adult dog classes, but the way the model is set up, we don't do a lot of extracurricular things because we don't have facilities. We rent by the hour. But we tell people, a lot of our instructors teach at other facilities or have their own places, and we're like, come on, keep going. You're just beginning, and you can't quit just when it's getting a little harder. I mean, puppy class is so important, and puppy training is so important for a lot of reasons, but you need that foundation so that their little brains are open and the neurons are connecting and the pathways are there, and then they're still going to go through adolescence. You're not going to avoid that just because you had a really well-trained puppy, but it's just the beginning. So anything I can do to get people inspired to just get out and play. And that's why I do say, even though titling and competing can be scary but fun, don't let that be what stops you. Just get out there and do it. And just start with a few groups online, start a little group and say, hey, we're doing training Tuesdays, and we're just going to pick a trick or a skill, and we're going to work on it and help each other, whether it's in person or not. And I find the accountability, not only the criteria, but the accountability of having something that you're working towards and having a goal is kind of key as well. I mean, because you can fall into the same thing even with trick training and stuff. If you're not thinking, I'm going to do a performance for my family at the holidays or something, just pick something. Or I'm going to go to the local, senior center, or I want to do this trick for TikTok, whatever it may be, this challenge. If you don't have a goal, it's easy to get lazy isn't the word, but distracted, off track. And so I find meeting with a group or having a goal and a deadline is very helpful. So even in my mentoring training, there's so many things to learn and there's so many things to practice and so many drills to do. And it's years, at least the way that I like to do it before I even put them on the field. And it can get kind of amorphous, they get to a certain age and point like, oh, no, I'm actually training for a goal here. I better get my button gear, And so, we can't just keep putzing around until it's exactly perfect or I try a different technique. So, and I could, again, there's no pressure but my own, but if I want to title my dog, well, then we have to get out there and do it. So then for me, the best thing to do is sign up for a trial, and then you kind of get a little more laser focused.
I'm very much the same. I need a something, a goal. Otherwise I get very demotivated. The whole COVID thing, beginning of 2020, I'm like, right, I'm going down to the nationals to compete, blah, 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 blah. Then it all fell apart and I haven't hardly played since, because I'm just like, oh, my dog's too old now. The other one's got a broken leg. The other one's had no foundations. And it's like, I don't have a goal. So now I'm getting really, really slack. But Jen says adolescence is double down time, and I completely agree. And as somebody, Kelly, that works in rescue or works with rescues, I mean, I have done volunteer work in one, and, it broke my heart. The majority of the dogs in there were adolescents. They were all the ones surrendered. The young dogs had that, that people just couldn't be bothered, or maybe that's not, or couldn't cope, I guess was probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. It depends. It's less. I mean, I find that it's less of a throwaway society than we think. But there are people that are like that. Mostly, people can't cope, or they've actually had problems. And sometimes the problems are external, like the neighbor is calling animal control because the dog's barking, because they can't be walked, because they're too big and they don't know how to do it. And it snowballs very quickly when a small puppy gets bigger and hits adolescence, and people get really overwhelmed. I've had people turn dogs in for escaping. The animal control was picking them up and taking them into the shelter, and each time the fine got higher.
Yeah.
And what it was they were intact, and she didn't know to either spay neuter, or she couldn't afford it or something, I can't remember. But the intact dogs were wandering. They had a fence, but they were digging out at certain times. They were a little bored. I mean, so it is a shame. It's adolescence where you do have to double down. I do get through it, and I think, again, if people were engaging and doing structured goals with their dogs, they wouldn't get as frustrated. They might get frustrated, but they wouldn't. I mean, it channels your. I mean, adolescent dogs are, training for a goal doesn't make your dog not be an adolescent, but having an outlet and a plan and a program, it helps their brains get through that hard time, and it helps your relationship. Your bond is so much stronger when you're both working towards a goal together and you're partners in something. And so I think that's very, very helpful. And again, it helps you see your dog for who they are. I think I just can't. That's my mission these days, is to help people understand and honor their dog's inherent dogginess. And utilize that and in their daily interactions with their dogs. So many people are trying to fit square pegs into round holes, rather than like either getting a round hole dog or carving out the squares because you insist you want this dog. If you have round holes and you insist that you need that square peg dog, well, then you better start cutting some corners out. It's only fair.
Yeah, that's a really good note to end it on. I think it's so true. If you've got the wrong dog, then figure it out.
Well, if you've willfully gotten the wrong dog, a lot of people choose the breed based on kind of this romanticism, and fantasy life that they want to have, or the things that they see on Instagram and TikTok, and those. And movies. I mean, none of that happens in a vacuum. This these dogs are getting a ton of training, it's a ton of time, a ton of attention. It's attention to detail. It's in how they feed, how they deliver their rewards, how they condition their dogs. You know, it's so much. So, you know, none of these dogs, even though they have natural instincts, they don't flow in that way unless somebody has put a lot of effort into them.
I think a dog, like, have you seen the movie Dog?
No, not yet, believe it or not.
Okay.
I should watch
Well,
that.
it's about a Malinois. Malinois are getting more popular, aren't they, on the big screen, unfortunately. And I met a lady with one. It wasn't her so much that wanted the dog. It was hubby, but then he's away a lot. And she's got this dog that is completely out of control, running the show, walking all over her, because it's not even her fault. She's quite a mild-mannered lady. And she just doesn't know how to tap into that dog's needs and drives and exactly all the stuff you're saying to make life better for both of them.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in that boat. There's a lot of young Malinois on the shelters and on the streets right now. A lot of it. So
yeah, it's pretty sad, isn't it? But
watch the videos and don't get one.
Yeah. Guess what? You don't. They're not jobs. But yeah, I love that you've got a good combination, because you get Malinois and Rottweilers, so they're two of my favorite breeds. So
we have so much in common. We still match, even when we're not trying.
Yeah. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely to chat with you again, and yeah, I'm sure everyone's very appreciative of your knowledge and that you can share your knowledge and your experience. And yeah, it's lovely to
thank you for having me, and thank you for tuning in, everybody. And now go out and train your dogs.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Jen says, you two are fantastic. Such a fun live. Thank you both. That's good.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
All right, take care, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. See ya.
Bye-bye.